The X-Men, Chapter 10, Part 4. Out of or into the world. In the strictest sense, the X-Men were never superheroes. They had superpowers. They were unquestionably heroic, but they didn't embark on general missions of righting wrongs and working for justice at large. Their calling was more specific. Xavier created the X-Men to foster better relations between mutants and normal people, to be agents of social change. In practice, this usually meant battling the evil mutants who didn't share Xavier's dream. What's a comic book without battles and villains after all? These mutant foes might be petty bank robbers who misuse their powers for a quick buck, or other adversaries driven by a dream in competition with Xavier's. One such idealistic enemy is Magneto. Complex villains are more satisfying than two-dimensional variety, and Magneto is a complicated bundle of idealism, pragmatism, and contradictions. Magneto appeared in the first issue of X-Men and remains a persistent thorn in Xavier's side to this day. Eric Magnus Leschner, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, aka Magneto, was never a petty thug with superpowers. His schemes were grandiose, his motives unclear. Eventually, readers learned that Leschner had been imprisoned as a child in Auschwitz concentration camps where his gypsy family died. But he bitterly survived after his magnetic powers awakened. Magneto became convinced that mutants were bound to suffer the same fate as the unfortunate inmates in the Nazi death camps. Resolving to stop that persecution, Magneto declared war on the human race. Xavier and Magneto had once been close friends, but their clashing ideologies turned them into enemies. Magneto's philosophy is simple. Humanity has repeatedly proved its suspicions and persecutions of those who are different. Homo superior cannot live peaceably with Homo sapiens. One race must overcome the other. Magneto is resolved that his side will prevail. The only problem is they're humans too, and they just end up doing the same thing to their people at the end. If you want to call them people. That's me saying my commentary. Charles Xavier and Magneto represented two extreme ideas about how mutants might deal with humankind. Between those polar opposite poles, other mutants have chosen other possibilities. Many mutants have sought to fit into the world in spite of their differences. For instance, a mutant named Polaris dyed her hair green, a more natural shade. Dyed her green hair a more natural shade so she could pass for human. A mutant with the ability to generate light took the stage named Dazzler and used her powers to gain an appreciative audience for her music performance. Dazzler let her fans assume the light show was artificial, projected, but when the public found out Dazzler was a mutant, her career crashed. The X-Men Angel kept his wings a secret when they sprouted during puberty. Whenever Warren was in public, he wore an uncomfortable harness under his clothing to crush his wings and hide them from sight. Some mutants have such non-human physical characteristics that disguising them as normal people is nearly impossible. One such mutant is second generation X-Men Nightcrawler. With dark blue fur, yellow eyes, pointy ears, three-fingered hands, and a tail, Nightcrawler could never pass himself off as a human being, or at least not until Tony Stark invented an image inducer, a pocket-sized device that projects a hologram allowing Nightcrawler to cloak himself in a human image. The problem with passing for human is that the mutant must deny his or her true nature. This particular compromise never lasts long. Either the secret gets out, or the mutant tires of the pretense. Angel, for instance, eventually renounced his secret identity so he would never again have to hide his wings. Nightcrawler abandoned the image inducer after only a few months, deciding it was better to be himself in public without shame or deception. The fourth strategy adopted by some mutants is to retreat from the world. If humanity hates us, they reason, we'll drop out of sight. We'll have no hope of setting things right in this messed up world. So we'll pull out entirely. Among mutants, the Morlocks represent the most extreme example of withdrawing from the world. This community of mutants, many of them misshapen and abused, made a home in the abandoned tunnels beneath New York City. Hidden from the eyes of the world, the Morlocks lived in peace and built their separate culture in the damp darkness. Eventually, their hiding place was uncovered, and a group called the Marauders attacked them. Many of the hidden mutants were massacred. Those who did not survive withdrew still further from the world, seeking refuge in an alien dimension. Can you see the parallels between the four strategies used by Marvel's mutants and the differing ways Christians deal with the world? Sometimes we Christians are so intimidated by opinions or prejudice of others we find it easier to keep a tactical silence about our own beliefs. We don't actually deny our faith, but by our silence we pass as people without Christian conviction or identity. Or maybe we retreat from culture that offends us. Monastian? I'm not sure how to... I hate these. Monasticism? I'm not sure how... Unfortunately, it's separated on two different lines of word. Is withdrawal in its pure sense, but modern Christians find other ways to withdraw from culture whose values offend us, such as pulling our children out of public school or forbidding cable television in our house. Magneto's decision is to make war on the culture may seem outlandish to us, but many Christian circles cultivate an attitude of us versus them. The worldview lies behind many Christian political action groups. Boycotts of companies with harmful policies and picketing a theater where an offensive movie is shown. Charles Xavier's dream of service and peaceful acceptance is an attractive vision for many Christians. Every time Christians help outsiders, we preserve peace for all. Soup kitchens, refugee adoption programs, jail visitations, and special offerings for families who lost their homes to a fire are typical ways Christians serve to love the world in the name of Christ. Which of these represents the most faithful way to be a Christian in the world but not of it? I couldn't answer that for anyone but myself. Far be it for me to pass judgment on somebody else's manner of following Jesus. Frankly, I see both strengths and drawbacks in each of these approaches. Withdrawal protects our holiness, but quiet compromises the peace. But in either case, we deprive the world of our witness. Jesus clearly calls us out of the world to follow him, but he also sends us out into the world bearing his love. No matter how we live out our faith, we must answer both callings with equal fervor. Battling the world may be the best way of building a more just and healthy society, But such an approach easily turns into judgmental and arrogant attitude that is far from the spirit of Jesus. Making enemies is easy enough. Loving them is considerably harder. Even Xavier's approach of loving service has a serious shortcoming. After all, Professor X is content with tolerance. He doesn't try to make converts. How could he? Mutants are born. One can't simply join the club. But mere coexistence falls short of Christianity's calling. The church must actively seek to bring outsiders into the family. And that is it again for today. I know another long reading. Sorry about that. Well, I'm sorry, but not sorry. I'm just going from pieces to pieces. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification button, share, and please comment on it. And I guess that's it for now. I will be back on Monday with more. God bless.